Hello and welcome to Property Question Time. I'm Stephen Galpin and this is a show where you can have your property related questions answered by a team of property experts. And joining me today is Noah Laguda, founder of Noahsure Real Estate. Welcome, Noah.
Oh, thank you, Stephen. It's good to be back.
Yeah,
thank you.
Good to have you.
Cheers.
And for the second time on the show, so obviously we've not put you off with the first outing, Philip Farrell, co-founder of OFFR Property Transaction Software specialist.
Delighted to be here.
So, good to have you both, and we'll get straight on with the question. And Philip, you're going first. Although real estate agents generally are appointed to sell properties, I'm about to start building my own property portfolio for investment. I really think I need professional help with this, and I'm looking to appoint a buying agent. Can the panel guide as to how to judge who might be a good buying agent, if it would be better to select one that buys only, or would they imagine that one that gets the best results are from agencies that cover all the usual agency disciplines? And I know you have a good overview of agency, so
yeah, obviously my own background is agency of 35 years, so but on the sell side as opposed to the buyer's agent, etc. I have a mixed view on it in the sense that there are certain specialist buyer agents out there who will be aware of, have the finger on the pulse, what's going on the ground, will know properties that are coming to the market, etc., etc. There are also some really, really good selling agents out there who will also operate as buyer's agents also. But I think what you need to be really careful about is who is paying whom for what service.
I was just going to say, you know, when you have the dual disciplines,
yes,
it's always a conflict of interest issue, isn't it?
And that's where I was going to use that word, conflict. You need to be very, very careful. Let's call a spade a spade. So from that perspective, if you're in a scenario whereby you're dealing with an agent, if I'm an agent and I'm selling a property and I'm getting paid 2% or 1.5%, whatever the figure is, my responsibility is to secure the best price possible for my vendor in a professional manner. And that is, as far as I'm concerned, is my job. Anything else is secondary. So I think people need to be very careful. They need to know up front what the agenda of if it's a selling agent, also what their role is in all of this. If they're just saying, I will charge you, and in a lot of cases it's maybe 1 or 1.5% from a buyer's agent perspective, that they would come in and they would say, look, I'll find this property for you, I'll source it for you, but they would need to be completely upfront if they have a vested interest in the success of the property that their client is buying. You just need to be very careful. It's a little bit grey.
Well, I can see a possible conflict coming there, which would be difficult. I mean, I think a lot of buying agents tend to be independent and not usually with shop fronts on the high street.
Correct,
or anything.
yeah.
So that's fine. So looking around for properties, they tend to go to agents. And I always wonder whether the buying agent is not only taking a fee from you, but is also getting a split of the fee from the agent. Is that fairly normal practice?
Well, I wouldn't have thought very normal. I'm sure it occurs, but again, it's something that's from an ethical perspective and professional perspective, I think agents need to be very mindful of. Who is paying your fee? Who is my responsibility to? If I'm a property professional and I'm a representative or I'm a member of a representative body, I have responsibilities as a property professional.
Yes. I think many times on Property Question Time, we get people starting out in the industry and they ask advice. And I think one of the key things that I'll just reiterate is that it pays to build your team around you and get a good team, get a good relationship with your local agent in the area that you are, have a good buying agent if you need one, and build these relationships, again, with lenders or brokers. It just pays to build this team, doesn't it? I'm sure you find that now too.
Yes, indeed, most definitely. And I echo everything that you said in regards to ethics and how it should be done. I do genuinely believe that you know, buying agents are very important for a lot of clients, because I've spoken to many clients that have a tremendous amount of hassle finding the property that they want. You know, they spend hours on all the property portals searching for an ideal property, and they just can't find it, or it gets sort of under offer or whatever before they can make an offer, and it's a very stressful situation.
Yeah. Noah, you're breaking ground a little bit with your business, because you have an all-encompassing overview of the real estate market and you offer advice on purchase and sale both here and abroad, don't you? So
yes, we do indeed.
that's quite a new phenomenon, I think, in the
Yeah.
same way that Philip's changing the state of conveyancing and the way deals are, transactioned really. So I think that's good. I'm glad to be part of this and glad to be listening to it. I think it's time that the markets do change.
Yeah.
And as we've said in earlier programs, I think that the opportunities are there at the moment. That's the real key thing. It's a time for change, I think. All right, okay, Philip, thank you for your answer there. Noah, your question.
Yes.
Although online-only estate agency have not taken the share of the industry that some thought they would, they are nevertheless well established in the UK market. I see now that property auctions are starting to offer live online opportunities to purchase. Do the panel think that this method of offering property for sale will become the norm, or will there always be stronger support for the more conventional businesses?
Yeah, I believe I touched on this as well the last time I was on the show, and I do always believe that the traditional, conventional method will always be around, because as I've said before, people do, like that genuine sort of personal relationship, the support, and yeah. But in regards to online, let's face it, we are living in an online world now. Wherever you go, wherever you look, everyone's on their phones and things of that nature. So I do believe things like online property auctions are becoming, ever so popular now.
I'm just wondering how long it is before we put our properties on Amazon.
Not long.
And you can be sure Amazon are talking about that.
Indeed, not long at all. Most definitely. And I think, we are definitely in a time now where things are moving towards that a lot more. And it's a good thing, in my opinion. But I will always say, it is important to have an expert guiding you along the way through what can be sometimes quite a challenging process. It's not as easy as just, buying a pair of socks from Amazon. There is, technical functions, and it's important to have, an expert working with you. What do you think?
Yeah, I think what's important too, we must realize that, I mentioned previously on the show that there's 1.1 million sales in transactions in the UK this year. Remember that only 3% of them will be auctions. And fundamentally, the max you're ever going to see, in my personal opinion, is maybe 5%. And the simple reason is you must sign an unconditional contract. And the amount of people, first-time buyers, etc., who need to get finance. So I think ultimately, I believe you're now seeing a move with auctions, physical in-room auctions and online auctions. You're going to see maybe 50-50, 50% online, 50% in-room or live streamed. But it's changing and the pressure will always be from the consumer, who will say, look, I want to be able to do this. I don't want to have to physically attend an event.
Well, I think the one thing about auctions is the difficulty is that, you're asking funders to give you an in-principle decision before you actually do the deed.
And they won't.
And they won't.
Yeah.
Because we are in a data-driven society when it comes to lending criteria, aren't we? It's a tick box exercise, and the last thing a funder wants is uncertainty, and an auction gives uncertainty, unfortunately. And of course, the level of guidance over the legalities is lesser in an auction as well.
One of the big advantages, though, obviously, of the auction scenario is whereby you've assigned binding contracts, so therefore it will complete. I think we mentioned previously that 1 in 3 traditional sales do not complete because of the conditional nature of offers.
Yeah.
And one of the problems is, and I've said for a long time, the holy grail in my view as a property person is that the contracts for sale for all properties, all transaction types, should be available from the outset.
Yes. Well, I agree with you. I know we had a pre-show discussion about this, and a buyer has now to provide an EPC certificate to a certain level. There's a cost. They have to often pay for photographs or walkthroughs to be filmed and to be videoed. I can't see why, you can't be sort of cajoled into producing the contractual information that you need for that sale before you start the process, because it actually can cost a lot of people a lot of money,
time and money,
on an abortive transaction. So I definitely think that's the way to go. Okay, well, thank you for your questions in part one. I'm going to go to a break now. I'm Stephen Galpin. I'm with Philip Farrell and Noah Laguda. Join me again after the break when they'll be answering more of your questions. Hello and welcome back to part two of Property Question Time with Philip Farrell and Noah Laguda. Welcome back, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Philip, with some predictions anticipating figures of up to 18% inflation for the coming year, mainly caused by food and fuels, do the panel think that this will filter in terms of inflation through to the property market? And if so, what will be the consequences for those who own property and those that don't? And I'm guessing those that do will be shouting hooray at 18% inflation. That's the difficulty, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question in that, you mentioned their inflation of up to 18%. I think it's around about at the moment, about 9 or 10% at the moment. But they feel obviously it could go higher as we go to Q3 and Q4. But there are other factors at play. There are the continuous increase in interest rates. There are obviously sentiment. There are the unpredictability of the situation in, say, the Ukraine and peace internationally, etc. So I think ultimately what you're going to see is we all react or act on how confident we are. It's not how the market is, it's how we perceive the market. So if we perceive things to be challenging, we will step off the gas. We will hold back. I think, with that type of talk and the outlook for the commercial sector is challenging too. I think you're going to see a stepping off the gas, so to speak, by a lot of people in relation to the amount of investment. I think there will be a lot of wait and see. And you'll have people who are going to act maybe in Q3 or Q4 and might just wait until the Q1 or Q2 of 2023.
So it might disrupt the usual sales seasons, if you like.
It creates, and you mentioned previously, I think in part one, people don't like uncertainty. This is creating significant uncertainty. Therefore, people will sit back and maybe wait and see.
Yes. I mean, if the government start to see huge inflation in terms of housing, do you think they'll act on that?
Well, I think while inflation is a problem at the moment, they have a lot of other things going on as well, and some of them are even bigger potentially. So I think they'll react accordingly. I think that huge inflation has been witnessed not just in the UK, it's been witnessed across the world because of what the world has been through. I think it's probably increased even slightly more now because the effects of Brexit are being felt even more so as we move forward. So I think they will react accordingly, but I think there will be other items at play which will be as important to them. One of them being a new prime minister coming up in the next couple of weeks. So yes, they will react, but I don't see them taking drastic measures.
No. I think the difficulty is calculating this inflation. I mean, I think it was one of the American banks or one of the trading houses that predicted a possible 18%. But you see, if you talk to people in the street, they'll say actually their food shopping has gone up a lot more than
25%.
Yeah, exactly. So how you balance it out, I'm not sure, and I'm sure the politicians tell us what's politically expedient rather than fact.
The key driver is energy.
Yes.
Oil, etc.
Yes.
That was one of the key ones.
Yes. It's a shame, isn't it? Because I think Russia could be such a key player in the world if it would only fit in with the rest of the countries. I think because they've got so many natural resources, they could be a real key player. But they seem to want this insular existence.
I don't think to fit in is high on their list. I think.
Possibly not. What do you think, Noah?
I echo what's been said, and it is. Are
you seeing property inflating in other countries as much as?
Not as much, to be honest. Obviously, it's derived by many things, of course, and it's difficult to put a finger on it, on how high it can go, when it's going to stop. We don't know, and it would be maybe a little bit of a disaster for first-time buyers, you know, and people like that. That's who I sort of feel for.
That's where the price is paid,
that's,
isn't it?
That's where the price is paid, and it's, you know, and but what can we do? We just got to see this time through, you know.
The problem, and just in relation to what you just said there, you know, initially when inflation started to increase in the last 12 to 15 months, it was expected that it would be somewhat short-lived. But that hasn't happened because other factors have come into play. So, and that's why it's very difficult. Anybody who tells you at the moment that they know what's coming next is in denial, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, exactly. Or how long these troubles will last.
Yeah.
That's the real question,
Troubled
isn't
waters.
it? Okay, Noah, your question.
Yes.
Obviously, at this time, the cost of heating, cooling, and running any type of property is becoming more and more costly. Do the panel think that both sales and rental transactions are falling through as a result of inefficient energy ratings now being looked at more closely?
I believe they definitely will have some form of an effect, there's no doubt. And I received a call from my energy supplier just the other day, and my energy bill was literally gone through the roof. I don't know about you, but you know, I nearly jumped out my seat, you know, and I'm wondering how that affects, you know, people who want to buy or people who want to rent, you know, because now it's a cost that has to be factored in, you know, more so than ever before. And I do feel generally that, you know, inefficiency can definitely affect, you know, transactions. How much they'll fall through by, it's difficult to say at this point. But we are definitely in a time where there is a lot of uncertainty in regards to energy.
Well, I think for the first time, people are really taking energy costs into account when they're stress testing themselves on whether they can afford a property. They have to.
Yeah.
I mean, I live in a block of apartments just not too far from here, and our energy costs, because we buy in gas to heat the main big boilers, is not covered by any kind of cap because it's a communal system as opposed to individual residential systems. So very, very difficult times.
Very difficult times.
And it's becoming a huge factor in the costs of running.
Indeed, indeed.
One thought I have is that over the last number of years, the gap has widened between the value of lower rated homes and the higher rated homes. So we get into the A rated, et cetera, et cetera. And you would imagine that gap is going to widen now because the cost of keeping those properties heated, et cetera, is becoming more and more expensive. So you now would expect the gap to widen even further between the newer homes and the resales or second-hand homes.
Yes, but what's also quite interesting, we're coming to a stage where energy efficiency will be legislated. It will have to hit a certain level. And one wonders if the capital is around to make the improvements necessary to meet those requirements, and what the attitude of the lenders will be in terms of that, because that's going to have an effect to play.
Most definitely. I mean, I think, look, you know, the costs of maybe becoming more green, essentially, you know, are quite high in terms of maybe fitting solar panels into your home or things of that nature. You know, they do not only have a cost, but they can also affect aesthetically how the property would look. But then we've got to look at long term, you know, something has to be done, you know, and whatever can be done to save money on the electricity or to be more efficient, I believe should be.
I tell you what, though, you've got to be quite some brave soul at the moment to start forking out, you know,
thousands.
5,000 or 10,000 quid on solar thing, or one of these energy pumps at 10,000, 15,000 pounds. So you've got to be brave, haven't you? Not knowing what the future holds.
That is true.
And how that then is going to set us back on our aim for, well, wherever we're going with the green specifications. But I mean, I just
well, that's only going one way. The green specifications are only going one way.
What, out of the window? I think that's the difficulty. Okay, just for the last minute or so of the show, perhaps now if we could start with you, just your overall view of the market at this time.
My overview of the market at this time in particular, I definitely would say, I would definitely say that we are in a seller's market. And the reason why I say that is because of the inquiries that we do receive. And I believe, cash is king during these times. So what we're finding is people are wanting to sell up so they can downsize and also have some cash flow as well. I tend to see that sort of reflection during these sort of times. It's a time where people would rather sell up, get some capital.
But that would indicate an active market.
Yeah, the market is definitely active, I would say. It is active, and there are buyers out there. There will always be buyers where there's sellers, and yeah, this is what I'm seeing. So it's an active market, and everyone has a part to play in this market, a very critical part as well.
Okay, Philip, your view.
Yeah, it's a very interesting one in the sense that what you mentioned there, there is demand there, and that is driven by undersupply. So on the other side, you have all of these other fundamental extreme inflation and interest rates increasing, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
But fundamentally, there is still a lack of supply.
Yeah.
And also then on top of that, you have the gap widening between affordability.
Yes.
So the ability of the first-time buyers to come in, and that's why it's going to be key going forward that the government continue to work with the first-time buyers in creating all the relevant incentives in whether it be shared ownership, et cetera, but because that's going to be key, because the gap between the values and the affordability is only going to widen.
Okay. All right, gentlemen, well, that's all we have time for today. So big thank you to Philip Farrell. Thank you very much, Philip, for coming in.
Thank you very much.
And Noah Laguda, although you don't have far to travel, thank you for coming in.
You're very welcome.
Great
Thank
to see you.
Great
and
to
all,
see you too.
Both of you, great answers. Thank you very much for your input. Well, I'm Stephen Galpin. That's all from me today. So join me again next time on Property Question Time.